The Forgotten Patient. Dr. Amelia Grant was a rising star in the field of psychiatry. Her career was built on unraveling the darkest corners of the human mind, and she prided herself on being unshakable. When the director of Hawthorne Mental Institute called her in for a consultation on an unusual case, she accepted without hesitation. Hawthorne was an old, nearly forgotten asylum on the outskirts of the city. It had operated for decades, treating the most challenging cases before closing its doors abruptly 20 years ago. Recently, however, it had reopened to handle a small group of patients with severe mental illnesses. Amelia had heard rumors, stories of strange occurrences and the hospital's darker history, but she brushed them aside. Logic ruled her world, not superstition. When she arrived, the building loomed over her like a sentinel of the past. Its Gothic architecture, complete with gargoyles and ivy creeping up the stone walls, felt unnervingly alive. Inside, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint scent of mildew. A nurse greeted her and led her through dimly lit hallways until they reached a small office where the director, Dr. Evelyn Harper, waited. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Grant," Evelyn said, shaking Amelia's hand firmly. "We've encountered a patient unlike any I've ever seen. I hoped your expertise might help." "Tell me about the case," Amelia said, taking a seat. Evelyn hesitated. "The patient's name is Eleanor Crane. She was admitted 6 months ago after being found wandering the streets, disoriented and incoherent. She had no identification and no memory of who she was. We only learned her name from a tattoo on her wrist." Amelia frowned. "No family? No history?" "None," Evelyn replied. "And that's not the strangest part. Her condition defies explanation. She speaks in fragments, sometimes in languages she couldn't possibly know. Her behavior fluctuates wildly. Some days she's catatonic, and other days she exhibits an intelligence that's almost unsettling." "Have you ruled out organic causes?" Amelia asked. Evelyn nodded. "Extensive testing. Nothing abnormal. But when you meet her, you'll understand why this case is beyond standard treatment." Intrigued, Amelia agreed to meet Eleanor. The patient's room was in the isolation wing, down a hallway that seemed darker than the rest of the hospital. As they approached, Amelia heard faint murmurs, like whispers carried on the wind. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone made her uneasy. Eleanor sat in a chair by the window, her back to the door. Her hair was long and unkempt, and her thin frame made her look almost childlike. She didn't turn when they entered. "Eleanor," Evelyn said gently, "this is Dr. Grant. She's here to talk with you." For a moment there was no response. Then Eleanor's head tilted slightly, and she spoke, her voice low and melodic. "She won't help you." Amelia froze. The voice sounded strange, too layered, as if two people were speaking at once. "Hello, Eleanor," Amelia said, regaining her composure. "I'm here to listen. Can you tell me how you're feeling today?" Eleanor turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting Amelia's. They were pale gray, almost colorless, and filled with something Amelia couldn't name. "Do you hear them?" Eleanor asked. "Hear what?" Amelia asked, keeping her tone calm. "The voices," Eleanor whispered. "They're always here, watching, waiting." Amelia leaned forward. "What are they waiting for, Eleanor?" Eleanor smiled faintly, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was knowing, almost cruel. "For you to remember." Amelia blinked. "What do you mean?" Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she began humming, a haunting melody that sent chills down Amelia's spine. Evelyn touched her arm. "We should step out," she said softly. Amelia nodded, feeling an inexplicable urge to leave. Back in the director's office, Amelia reviewed Eleanor's file. The notes were sparse, filled with descriptions of her erratic behavior and the staff's growing unease. But one entry caught Amelia's eye. Eleanor repeatedly draws the same symbol, a spiral with jagged edges. She claims it is the mark of the Watchers. "May I see her drawings?" Amelia asked. Evelyn hesitated, then retrieved a folder. Inside were dozens of pages filled with the same symbol, drawn with an obsessive precision. Amelia's stomach turned. Something about the spiral felt wrong, as if looking at it too long would pull her into its depths. That night, Amelia stayed at a nearby hotel, unable to shake the feeling that Eleanor had been speaking directly to her. She lay awake, her mind racing, until exhaustion finally claimed her. She dreamed of the asylum. In her dream, she wandered the dark hallways, the walls closing in around her. She could hear whispers, Eleanor's voice, repeating the same phrase, "Remember who you are." Amelia awoke in a cold sweat, the words echoing in her mind. The next day, she returned to the asylum determined to dig deeper. She asked Evelyn about the hospital's history, specifically about the time before it closed. Evelyn's expression darkened. There are stories, patients who claimed to see things that weren't there, staff who disappeared without explanation. And then, one day, the entire ward shut down. Officially, it was due to funding cuts. But the rumors. What rumors? Amelia pressed. Evelyn hesitated. They say the patients weren't imagining things. That something was here. Something that fed on them. Amelia decided to confront Eleanor again. When she entered the room, Eleanor was sitting in the same position, staring out the window. "Who are the watchers?" Amelia demanded. Eleanor turned, her expression blank. "They are what remains when you forget." "Forget what?" Eleanor stood, her movements slow and deliberate. She stepped closer, her pale eyes boring into Amelia's. "Forget that you were one of us." The room spun. Amelia stumbled back, her mind reeling. "What are you talking about? You don't remember, do you?" Eleanor said, her voice a whisper. "You think you're here to help me, but you've been here before. You belonged to this place." Memories flashed in Amelia's mind. Fragments of faces, laughter, and then screaming. She saw herself in a hospital gown, staring at the spiral symbol. She remembered shadows crawling along the walls, voices whispering her name. "No," Amelia said, her voice shaking. "That's not possible." Eleanor smiled, a terrible, knowing smile. "The watchers always bring us back." Amelia's vision blurred, and the last thing she saw before the world went dark was the symbol. Etched into the walls, the floor, her own skin. When she woke, she was in Eleanor's room. But Eleanor was gone, and the walls were bare. Evelyn entered, her face grim. "Dr. Grant," she said softly, "it's time for your session." Amelia looked down and realized she was wearing a hospital gown. In the corner of the room, a small mirror reflected her face, but it wasn't her. It was Eleanor. The watchers had taken her place. Thanks for stepping into the unknown with us. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite twist, and don't forget to subscribe, because the best stories always have another chapter waiting. See you in the shadows.